We previously showed you how to hook an audience in the opening minutes. Now we're tackling the hardest part, the final act. The difference between a masterpiece like Up and a mess like Frozen 2 comes down to one thing: payoff. So how do you end a movie and how do you not? We're gonna start this one with something we feel very deeply about. It might be unconventional, but listen, the end shouldn't justify the means. Instead, it must reinforce that the path to success matters. Think about it. We follow a hero for almost 2 hours, watching them struggle, make choices, and grow. But if they only win by being selfish or sneaky, and the movie acts like that's totally fine, the whole story feels incomplete and wrong. It sends a confusing message, like saying you can cheat on a test as long as you get an A. That's exactly where some popular animated movies like Ralph Breaks the Internet fall into. The creators wanted a happy ending, but they basically gave Vanellope a free pass for a really destructive choice. Is it right for a movie to reward a character for doing the very thing it told us was wrong just a few years earlier?
You're not going turbo, are you?
In the first Wreck-It Ralph movie, the biggest sin in the arcade was to go turbo. That is, to abandon your game and hurt others for your own gain. King Candy did this, and he had to be defeated in the end. But here comes Vanellope, and she essentially goes turbo on her game, Sugar Rush, because she's bored and wants to live in Slaughter Race. The movie then makes Ralph the bad guy who is trying to stop a princess from achieving her dreams. Not once did anybody stop to think that the glitch was actually acting like King Candy. In fact, the writers even provided an enabling environment for her selfishness. Using the character Shank, they wrote Vanellope's code into the new game without Sugar Rush dying. And just like that, she hugs it out with Ralph, they share a few tears, and everyone lives happily ever after. Talk about double standards. It's a plot shortcut that was totally unearned. Kinda makes you feel bad for King Candy, doesn't it? So, what's a better way to close a movie where the means to the end is good? Well, imagine there's a cat famous for being reckless and arrogant, and he has lived and laughed and wasted 8 of his 9 lives. But when he meets literal death, he's scared stiff and hides away, settling in a cozy cat safe house. That's where he is when he hears about the wishing star, a chance to get all his lives back. So he goes on an adventure to get that wish, only to find that he has to fight other terrible people who want it too. In case you didn't realize already, we're talking about Puss in Boots: The Last Wish. Now, what if Puss had found the star and actually used it to get his wish? Imagine him going back to the bar, singing and dancing, adored by the crowd, just like the very first scene of the movie. Would we have been happy for him? The answer is a big, fat no. Because, let's face it, his end would not have justified his means. Think about all Puss did to get where he was. He constantly belittled and pushed Perrito aside. Oh, and the dog's name is not even Perrito. That was just something Puss gave him because he felt the dog was just a puppy, even though he's not. And worse, he even thinks the dog is deranged.
Is he deranged?
Yep.
Puss only lets Perrito come along because he didn't have a choice. Because, like we have come to know, he is an arrogant cat who doesn't care about teamwork. He was also using Perrito to get to the wish because it was only the dog's path that was easy to follow. But perhaps the worst thing he did was betray Kitty Softpaws over and over again. First, it was not showing up for their wedding. And then, when Death tried to kill him again, he decided to use the wish alone. So if he had gone ahead with it and gotten all his wishes, it wouldn't have sat well with us. We wouldn't have been happy, just as we weren't happy with Ralph Breaks the Internet. Puss in Boots would have appeared as a coward who is so scared of dying that they would betray and use the ones they love. So no, the end should never justify the means. Because Puss realizes this and chooses to be good. We get an epic ending. First, we see him stand up to Death and fight him head on. Then he accepts that he knows he cannot beat the wolf.
But I will never stop fighting for this life.
This shows someone who is both humble and courageous. Also, isn't it just great how the beginning, where Death first fights Puss, is similar to their last encounter? Remember how Death used his foot to push Puss's sword to him after he dropped it? We saw something similar at the end, except this time it was Death's sickle that was getting tossed by Puss. But to make things even better, Puss, Goldilocks, and Kitty decide that destroying the wish was a better idea, because having one life and sharing that life with someone you love was better than anything else. And with that, the movie ends in a grand way. That's the difference between a moral victory and an empty one. However, even if your hero chooses the right path, their story still needs one crucial thing to feel complete. Imagine a character starts at point A and has to travel to point B. That path is the arc, and by the time they get to point B, they shouldn't look or act like the person they were at point A. They have to grow up, learn a big lesson, or conquer a deep fear. If the character is exactly the same at the end as they were at the start, why did we even watch the movie? The ending has to prove that our hero earned their happy ending by changing something important about themselves. Another thing the hero or main characters should not do is have a reset of their arc. That seems to be another problem with Ralph in Ralph Breaks the Internet. Thankfully, Meet the Robinsons offers a much better way to close an arc. Our main character, Louis, starts out with a huge problem. He is stuck in the past. He's an aspiring inventor who was left at an orphanage. So he spends all his time inventing a memory scanner because he's convinced that if he can find his birth mom, she'll want him. The movie's supposed villain, the bowler hat guy, is also stuck in the past. We find out he's actually Mike Yagubian, or Goob, Louis's old roommate at the orphanage. Goob reveals that he let a single failure ruin his life. He fell asleep during a crucial baseball game because Louis kept him up all night with his stupid inventions.
A dream that was ruined in the last inning.
Goob let that defeat consume him, wallowing in misery for years, feeling that it was all Louis's fault. This one small mistake turned him into the bitter guy we meet. The whole movie is Louis running around, trying to fix the past. But the Robinsons, this weird, wonderful family he meets, keep teaching him something important. They are the family that celebrates failure. They throw a party when something goes wrong because they know it's just a step towards something right. This leads to the movie's central, super important lesson, which is all about the motto, keep moving forward. The climax of the film is perfect because it shows Louis that the future is not set in stone, but is only a possibility that depends on the choices we make right now. He also sees that Goob is just a future version of another kid who got angry over one missed baseball catch. So instead of inventing a new machine or defeating Goob, he goes back in time and wakes him up, so he can catch the ball. By making this small, kind choice, Louis completely changes the future. The whole villain arc is closed with a tiny act of kindness and learning from failure rather than a fight. When Louis returns to his own time, he's ready. He doesn't need to find his birth mom anymore because he's finally accepted that family is built on love and shared experiences, not just biology. He lets go of his past attachment and walks back into the science fair with the confidence to try again. He succeeds, and he earns his new quirky family. His character arc goes from being stuck and scared to embracing the future and welcoming failure. That's what a perfect arc looks like. But what happens when a movie builds a beautiful arc and then just throws it away? Let's talk about Frozen 2. The first Frozen movie was revolutionary because the whole plot was about sisters being separated and then finding their way back to each other.
You sacrificed yourself for me? I love you.
Elsa finds her true self and learns to control her powers and live happily in her kingdom, while Anna proves that a sister's love is the most powerful magic of all. Their arc was about closing the physical and emotional distance between them. So what does the ending of Frozen 2 do? It completely resets that arc. Elsa discovers she is a magical spirit and chooses to stay in the enchanted forest, becoming a guardian, while Anna is left to rule Arendelle. They are separated again, and you have to ask whether Elsa gets along better with water horses than with her own people and her sister. The whole emotional journey of the first movie was dedicated to bringing them back together, and now they are parting ways again? The creators spent the first movie trying to avoid the old cliched princess story where a charming prince saves the day. They told us sisterly love supersedes all. But in the sequel, they separate the powerful sisters and let Anna settle down with Kristoff, taking on the traditional role of a queen, while Elsa takes her dream far away from her sister. Yes, it's true that in real life, siblings part ways to follow their careers or dreams. And many times, this separation also involves marrying a significant other. However, with Frozen 2, it highlights the confusion of the creators, and this is the type of confusion you want to avoid. This is because the movie reversed the arc, taking us back to a place of separation. That's why Frozen 2's ending feels so confusing and unsatisfying. And that's it. The conclusion should be the final logical step forward, not a retreat back to the starting line. But if your ending is not closing the movie in a meaningful way, then it should at least be doing this next thing. When Up came out in 2009, people knew right away they were looking at something special. The opening montage about Carl and Ellie hit so many hearts and is considered one of the most iconic movie openings of all time. We covered why that opening works so well in another video, but here's something important. A movie can't start that sad without giving you something back. The ending has a debt to pay, or more fittingly, the perfect emotional resolution that turns the starting tears into satisfied smiles. So how did Up deliver the perfect emotional closure to match that massive sadness? The film is about Carl processing the loss of his wife, Ellie. He's stuck in the past, literally trying to fulfill an old promise to her by moving their house to Paradise Falls. But in doing this, he treats the world and the young scout Russell with nothing but grumpiness. He's been living a life defined by grief, and he just doesn't know how to move on. The whole adventure forces Carl to realize that Ellie's greatest adventure was more than just a geographical place. It was the life they shared, and the new life he could still have with the people around him. In the climax, Carl makes a true emotional sacrifice. He throws away his old things, the furniture and the photo albums, to make the house light enough to fly and save Russell. This is huge. It shows that he finally understands that the living people he cares about are more important than the things that remind him of the past. He lets go of the physical memory so he can embrace the future. The moment that delivers the ultimate emotional closure is not the house landing on the cliff, which it does perfectly, exactly where he and Ellie wanted it. But it's when Carl gives Russell something special.
I would like to award the highest honor I can bestow.
The medal Carl gives the kid is an old, dusty bottle cap from Ellie, the one she gave him when they first met as kids. When Carl pins that bottle cap onto Russell, he is symbolically doing three massive things. He's passing on Ellie's spirit of adventure to a new generation. He's letting go, and finally giving himself permission to love and care for someone new. All of this is made 10 times more powerful by the beautiful, gentle swell of the musical score, which reminds us of Ellie's presence and makes the whole moment feel like a warm final hug. The film seals this new bond with a final shot of Carl and Russell eating ice cream on the sidewalk curb, just like Russell used to do with his absent father. This beautiful little detail cements Carl's new role as a loving father figure. It's a powerful, quiet moment of acceptance and moving on that closes the circle of his heart, making every tear you cried in the opening montage feel completely worth it. That's emotional closure done right. And to be honest, pairing Up with any other movie, whether good or bad, feels like an abomination because it was just too good. So we'll just move on to another thing the end of a movie must have: The crazy thing about this next detail is that Disney is responsible for both the wrong and the right reasons. This is basically about a movie's theme. That is, the single central idea the story wants to teach you about life. When you think about the best movie endings ever made, The Lion King always finds its way into the conversation. It's such a clear picture of how a theme can close a story in a way that feels honest and complete. The whole movie is built on the idea of the circle of life. Life moves, life changes, and everything that goes out comes back in another form. The story starts with a little lion cub being lifted into the sun while the whole kingdom watches. And at the very end, the story returns to that moment, but this time, Simba is the one standing on the rock, and Rafiki is lifting Simba's own child. Nothing feels forced or loud. It is simple and sure. That is the kind of ending that makes people sit still for a moment, even after the credits roll. It reminds you of why you came to the story in the first place. It is the kind of ending that says, see, this is what it all meant. Of course, the trauma of Scar throwing down Mufasa doesn't leave you, but you get the point. Anyway, why does it work so well? The answer is kind of simple. The whole story promises you a journey about growth, loss, pride, and taking your place in the world. The ending keeps that promise without trying to stretch or twist it. Now, let's look at an ending that struggled because the entire movie was a mess. Enter Wish, a movie that came out during Disney's 100th anniversary. Everyone expected a strong theme, the kind that could wrap the whole legacy in an epic way. The movie wanted to talk about dreams, about how wishes belong to the person who holds them, and how they are the essence of existence. That idea sounds great. It could have been powerful, but the ending makes it hard to connect to that idea because the entire movie doesn't quite stick to its own message. So, if the wishes matter so much, why do these people look fine without them? You almost want to stop the story and ask the people, do you even want change? Or are you just waiting for someone else to do it for you? Asha sees things differently, of course. She wants her grandfather to get his wish back, so she brings it to the king on her first day. Her approach is rushed and bold, and the moment sets both of them on edge. She keeps pushing, he tightens his grip, and then the story turns him into the villain without earning that shift. But the biggest surprise comes at the end. The king is defeated not because of choices or growth or understanding, but because everyone sings at the same time. It's absolutely cringy and doesn't prove anything. It doesn't answer the theme the story promised. But do you know what's really crazy about the end? The movie also does something stupid by giving Asha a sudden new title as the first fairy godmother, complete with a wand and responsibility over wishes. The film spends its whole runtime arguing that no single person should hold that kind of power, yet the ending hands it right back to her. But the final insult to the theme is what happens in the last few minutes. The film suddenly shifts from telling Asha's story to setting up other Disney lore. We get heavy-handed references to establish the origins of key Disney items: the magic mirror, the star in Pinocchio, and the fairy godmother. When a movie cares more about explaining old stories than finishing its own, what does that tell you? Anyway, we've talked about earning your victory, changing your life, and closing emotionally and thematically. But none of that would matter if you don't resolve one last thing. Resolve the conflict. Unless there is an indication of a sequel at the end, a conflict must be resolved. Or else, what was the point of the story? Take Across the Spider-Verse, for example. By the end, more conflicts pile up. Gwen betrays the Spider Society and starts her own rebel group. Miles ends up in the wrong universe, and he discovers an evil version of himself. On top of that, Spot is still out there with his plan to go after Miles' dad. It's a lot, right? But here's the thing, the movie drops plenty of hints that this is not really the end. Miles gearing up to fight the Prowler was one indicator that there's about to be an epic fight. Even Gwen assembling a team to stop the spot is another clue. The only issue here is how long we will have to wait to see what happens next. So what then is a good example of a movie that doesn't resolve its conflict and still provides no indicators of a sequel? That would be Mulan 2. The movie makes a huge promise at the beginning, but then completely ignores it at the end. The story is fueled by one massive urgent problem. China is in imminent danger from the invading Mongols. The emperor tells Mulan and General Shang that they must escort his 3 daughters to a neighboring kingdom for an arranged marriage alliance. If that marriage doesn't happen within 3 days, the armies won't join, and China will be destroyed. This threat of national destruction is the entire reason Mulan and Shang are even on their journey. It is the high, terrifying stake that makes the story matter. But as the film goes on, Mulan and the princesses start focusing on a different issue. The princesses fall in love with their guards and don't want to go through with the arranged marriage. The movie completely shifts its attention to the question of duty versus love, and in true Disney style, love wins the day.
We're ready to go through with the wedding.
No, your orders are to take care of each other.
Mulan helps the princesses avoid the marriages, and they get to marry the guards they love. It's a happy moment for the characters, but here's the problem. Did they ever save China? The answer is no, and the plot hole is huge. By the time the credits roll, the Princess Alliance has not happened, and the impending Mongol invasion, the thing that kicked off the entire plot, is completely unresolved. The right way to do this would be to simply look at most movies out there. Shrek, Rise of the Guardians, Hercules, Tarzan, Tangled, you name it. These movies started with a conflict and ended with the resolution of that conflict. It is storytelling 101. Unfortunately, Mulan 2 fails to remember this. The crazy thing about Mulan is that since its first installment was released in 1998, the movies coming after haven't done justice to her legend. Even the live-action remake ruined things further. But Mulan is not alone in this. There are other famous animations that have failed with their reboot to live action. The video here shows us what movies failed, like Mulan, versus those that succeeded. So go check it out now.